Hi there.
Hello. We are live.
Yep, we're already live. Okay. Yep.
It is hot and muggy.
Well, it's hot here, but you've got us on mugginess, I'm sure.
Oh God, yeah.
Oh boy.
I'm just gonna do a little test here.
Yep, can see that.
I have so many things open.
I know. What are there certain things I should have open? I
have
about that.
everything for the business license, I certainly hope, and the water.
Okay.
It's not this.
I will get a capital projects thing open.
Oh yeah, that would be great. I can open that too though.
Another mistake that Chris kind of helped me see, which is there's no action item on the capital projects plan. It just says capital projects plan.
Okay.
Even though it's in the consent agenda, I think that
Hold off.
yeah, because in his staff report it says the committee would ask the council to make a motion to approve. So yeah, I mean, yeah, that is how it should be. So they can talk about it today, and hopefully we'll put it as an action item next month. Is Chris the other person, or is that you as well?
No, that's my desktop.
Okay.
I have to be on two for sharing, and I don't know, I've gotten used to doing it a certain way, and so the two computers works well for me. I can manage the Zoom on one, and over here is the desktop with all the other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it just works.
Hey, Jen, on the court recorder, just press that record button twice and that should be okay, right?
Yeah, you'll see the clock start to go.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna record it on a number of devices to see.
Thank you.
To make sure.
Well, it's good practice, I guess. Yeah. I'm gonna close this. So I don't click on anything by mistake. Last minute. All is quiet.
Oh, also, Sheridan and John Goldner both suggested changes to the minutes. I guess they will bring those up during the talk about.
Did we get any public comments submitted? I'm guessing we didn't because I didn't see an email. Okay, and
No.
I only have one person that wants to speak that you know about. I asked the others that registered and they said no, so.
Okay.
Just so you know.
Both Chris and I left the office to be home to do this.
Makes sense. Might have some people walk behind me here in a minute, but wish I could figure out the background.
Am I allowed to share screen? Yeah,
Oh,
let me just, I'm going to test my share screen for a minute. Screen 2. And that's capital project, right?
yep.
Okay. You know, they should really show, they should show you what other people are seeing, I think.
Mm.
But anyway, okay. Let's see, how about the regular agenda? Do you have that pulled up too?
I do have that, yeah.
Okay. And will you cue me when you start your recording?
You will hear it.
Oh,
It's
okay.
that obnoxious interruption
Okay.
that I wish was, but they changed it and it's super invasive now. So I don't think you can miss it unless you're really not paying attention.
Okay.
John Goldner accepting the meeting. With this setup, it's not as easy for me to look at YouTube.
Let me know if I can help.
No, all good. Oh, dude. Oh my gosh. Birds trying to get in the window.
Hey, Polly.
How are you?
Hello.
Hey, I'm gonna go get 2 minutes of fresh air before our marathon here. I just wanted to make sure I could log in. I always come back and struggle to find the link or whatever, so.
I know how that is.
So, cool. I will, how do I do this?
See you in a minute.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, that's all working. I feel like there's a furnace behind me.
I see a fan in the other room.
Yeah, oh, the other room has zero effect on me. These birds are just attacking the window. Is my audio okay? Just because I have these headphones in and stuff. I guess it's only for hearing. I guess my computer is picking up the rest of it.
Yeah, it sounds fine.
Oh, what's that thing?
Oh, this is that Kate Black's old.
Like for tapes? The little tape cassettes?
No, it's digital.
Oh, it is.
It's electronic.
Oh, okay.
It's MP3 technology.
That's okay. That's how I save our audios still, as MP3s.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. They're saved as MP4s and then I convert them.
Yeah, I just can't figure out how to turn it on.
Oh. I should rename myself here. Sometimes I forget to do that.
Maybe I won't use that one.
You all good with that, Piper?
I've got the
Or-
court one going and I'm gonna do
Oh,
my,
all right, you figured it out. The pause, I think, is just one. Stop.
yeah, it's just on and I'm just gonna press it twice.
Okay.
Hi, Margaret. Hi, John.
Then we get Karen.
Hi, everybody.
Hi there.
Hello.
John, I apologize for texting you late. I should have known that you would respond. And
That's what I do.
I know if this were France, I'd be in jail. I think it's not legal for me to do that.
Huh. I was going to say something about I don't really want to be in France right now, but it's all right. It makes more of an impact.
Our
I see
office
that bright
would-
light.
I
Don't
think
worry. No worries.
I'm willing to bet they don't have August town council meetings either. Since
I don't
everybody's
think they
on.
do anything for 6 weeks in the summer.
Right.
John,
Yes, dear.
the edit you had for the minutes, you'll have to bring that up at the,
I looked
when
at
they-
it. I looked at what you have, and thank you, Margaret, for pointing those things out. It's fine.
okay. Sheridan has
Thank
a change she wants to make to one of the minutes that she'll have to read out loud.
Okay.
Or I could bring up the, I can bring up that email to text, so.
Mayor, I just made you co-host, which I forget to do sometimes, but I did it just in case I have any technical difficulties, but
Okay.
I don't expect that.
Chris Colley, how are you?
You're
You're
muted,
You're
Chris.
still muted.
Very quiet. He's a quiet boy.
I'm not, and my headphones are plugged in too, which I'm really nonplussed about that. But
Well, I
I'll
don't
try
know
not to
that-
fidget with it too much.
The kind of the forehead wave that you got going on there makes you look pretty movie star-ish to me.
I need a haircut. It's got a life of its own.
Hi, Cliff. Hi. There you are, Sheridan. Hi. I thought I saw you pop on.
It's like Sheridan, have
Hello.
you been evicted? You're always moving. Van life.
Peripatetic.
I have to look that up.
Like a peregrine.
Hi, Elise. No, she's not on audio yet. Say hi in a second. She's walking away. Hello, Elise. glad the air is a little bit better today. It's just been so brutal.
It's a miracle.
Yeah. I don't have any air conditioning up in the Blackjack, you know. I wonder how many people in Alta do. The windows open as little as possible. All right, it is 3:00 and we have a quorum, so I think I'll call this meeting to order. This is the virtual, excuse me, the virtual work session of the Alta Town Council on Wednesday, August 11th, 2021. The meeting will be an electronic meeting without an anchor location pursuant to my August 3rd, 2021 determination that it would be unsafe and therefore unwise to hold the meeting in person. Jen at townofalta.com can be approached with questions, and if you're interested in watching or registering to participate in this meeting, please see the instructions on our website. And comments were accepted until right now. Okay, we have two items on our agenda for this work session. One, for the first half hour, we'll talk about the business license study results and recommendations in terms of what to do about that. And then we'll recap our listening session from the little that had to do with the Little Cottonwood Canyon EIS from UDOT. All right, for the first item, the business license study. There's a staff report that was handed out that mentioned it, and then on the town website is, I guess we're going to talk about the proposed fee schedule. Jen, I think you're the person who's led the charge on this, and why don't you, and I think Polly also is prepared to make some remarks. So.
Yep. So what I'm going to do is share my screen here. And I do want to acknowledge Aaron Montgomery, the main project manager on the study, has joined us for the work session. So thanks, Aaron. And he'll be able to help answer any questions about the study that I'm unable to answer. So I
didn't see you pop on, Aaron. Hello. Good to see you.
Good to see you guys again.
Okay. Okay. Let me get. Oh, and of course, this is right in the way of my scrolling. Okay. So as you all know, we worked with Zion Public Finance and Aaron Montgomery to do this. Right now it's draft business license fee study. And we have already, Aaron, sorry, I hope I don't make anybody too dizzy while I navigate where I need to be. We've already presented on this study. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and kind of just focus on some highlights and basically recommendations and the path moving forward for everybody. And then if the council wants to ask me questions, you're all welcome to do that. So one thing I wanted to call out is as we consider changing any of the business license fees, we want to think about the percentage of change to current fees, think about any dollar amount to existing businesses, the correlation between proposed fees and the actual cost of these services, and then the comparables. Oops, and I'm sorry, I'm using my computer a little different than normal today, so I'm going to be trying to not jar around too much. Okay, so what we did, the main things that we looked at in the study were base administrative costs, which apply to all licenses issued in the various categories. There are disproportionate service costs and also enhanced service costs. And so now I'm gonna, unless anybody has any study or any questions, I'm gonna jump down and focus on, this is the right page here. What I want to do is focus on this chart here, which is on page 6. And this is what I want to focus on over here is the maximum application fee. And so this is something I just want to remind the council that to be legal, we can't charge any more than what is in, what is in this far right column here. Okay, and now, did everybody understand the difference between the first application and the additional applications, or do you want me to explain that?
I would like some explanation
Okay.
if it's in a different category versus the category that maybe the first application is in.
Oh, good question. I don't know that it. Ooh. In my experience, and maybe if Polly or Aaron wants to jump in, but I was thinking that this, and maybe we need some language to address this, but that it would be a secondary application in the same category.
That's how it's laid out in the report.
Okay, yeah.
But of course you have discretion to do it however you want, but that's how it's laid out. Maybe Jen, you could just speak to how often, or just give some examples of a first license versus a secondary.
So we really only have this situation for one category, which is category 8, which is the ski lift company. And currently we only have one of those. But the way they apply for their licenses, they use a joint license provision. And so they are essentially they have multiple businesses that are part of the Alta ski area in one building. So they apply for each building so that they have a physical address located with that building. And then the joint license covers all businesses in that building. And what you do is you charge the maximum of any one of those licenses. That's how the joint license provision works. And so other businesses will use the joint license provision, but I haven't seen and it's not to say we couldn't in the future, but I haven't seen a combination of a joint license and multiple applications to the town.
So I can imagine a hotel would ask for the first license as a hotel and perhaps do they ask for a second license as a restaurant?
The lodging license in the case of a hotel covers the restaurant.
Okay.
Because that's a normal business practice.
An example would be for the ski area. In addition to each building, we also get a business license for the fee booth. We get a business license for the campground.
So they're location specific.
Yeah. And then depending on what's in a building, the way we've done it in the past is an example would be Al's is only a restaurant. Where it was one year, when now it's like got a ski shop in it. So we take, like Jen said, whatever the most, whether it's a restaurant or it's retail services, that's what gets paid for that building.
Well, you actually, Elise, use
we
the
do
category
the ski,
8, the ski
right.
company. Yeah.
Yeah, the only time
because that's historically been.
The restaurant one, I think we've only done for the food truck. I think that's what we did this summer, but I can't remember that one.
Well, so the ski category 8 covers all of the different activities of the ski area.
Yes, in any one of those individual locations. And so the reason that we have the first application and the second application is because with the enhanced service fee, if I scroll down here to the second application, we didn't want to, it's the disproportionate service fee, my bad. We didn't want to charge them that multiple times in the same location because there's not additional effects on the town and our resources to manage that. And so what we were trying to do is recognize and not overcharge businesses in that situation.
So Jen, I guess my question is because the ski area is applying for the different fees for each building, does the first building account as first application and then each building is a second application after that?
Yes, that's
Okay.
exactly how this would work.
So if the ski lift company is a category of business for running a ski area and associated businesses, I'm a little confused about why, say, a food truck would get, if it's a second license, would get charged at a ski area rate rather than a restaurant or cafeteria.
It
rate.
wouldn't, it would be under a category, it would be under a different category, and it would be the first application is how I would administer it in that situation. So that's a standalone business. So you would look at what that business is actually doing. You would put it in the correct category. I think this is the first and second is more applicable to, Albion Grill, where there's multiple businesses going on, Alf's, Watson's, those sort of locations that the ski area has. And this is just in practice based on how we've received applications in previous years. They could decide to do something different.
And I can't remember what we did for the fee booth and campground, but
those were just their own independent licenses, separate, because they're
exactly.
not, because again, it comes down to the physical location of the building.
Yeah,
And
but
they have a different address.
I just can't remember which category we did those under.
Oh, yeah. I don't
That part
think
I can't remember.
matters in
Yeah.
this.
So I had a question, Jen, about the hotels or lodges. Some of them have services the others don't have, for example, a spa. So are we differentiating the cost for hotels that are, say, full service that have all of those things versus those that do not?
So it depends. And so in some instances, the lodge owns and runs the spa. So in that situation where there's a parent company of the lodge, they don't have to, but they can use the joint license provision and cover the hotel with the restaurant and everything else that it does. And they can cover the spa. Now I would just, and you would note that on the application, but if it's a different company, because we've had this in the past with other lodges where they rented space from the lodge, they would be applying for their own license and it would be treated as a first application.
And where are the provisions about joint licensing? I missed that altogether.
It is in the ordinance. We didn't do any changes to that part of the ordinance, but it is in Title 3. I mean, I can try and pull it up if we want to see it, but it's in the application section. If I recall, it's kind of towards the end of that section. Here I can. Joint licenses 3.1.12. So whenever any person is engaged in two or more businesses at the same location within the town, such persons shall not be required to obtain separate licenses for conducting each of such businesses. There shall be issued one license, which shall be computed at the highest license fee applicable.
And to be clear, like Jen, as you explained to me the other day, I think the difference is whether it's in the same building. So for example, Alta ski lifts, let's say they have 4 buildings and they have 2 businesses in each building. With between the joint license and this additional license, so they would have 4 licenses because each building would get their own joint license. And then they would have within a building, let's say they had 2 licenses because one would be for the cafeteria and one would be for the ski shop, then or ticket sales or whatever, then one would pay the enhanced fee, the primary fee, and the second one would pay the secondary fee. Is that how you were interpreting it?
In that situation, and again, I mean, we don't tell people how to apply. I I can help coach them if they apply wrong. But most often people are applying and they're making a choice, and I don't question their choice of how they apply as long as it falls within the parameters of what we're doing, if that makes sense.
I just want to be clear that if this is the case, Jen, we are not talking about changing any of these procedures.
No,
This is what we've been doing.
yes.
And while I think reviewing what we've been doing is a worthwhile thing because people ought to understand it, I'm also wanting to point out that we're 15 minutes into the
Yes.
30 and we haven't talked substantively about the fees.
Yeah.
I
So-
just, sorry, I just had a clarification on that so right now we don't have a second application fee.
Correct. This is
Correct.
something that's
That's new.
new.
Okay.
And the
Okay.
reason is because
Yeah.
in this study, we went into more depth and we were able to pull some data for the disproportionate services and the enhanced that hasn't been previously calculated in the business license studies.
So my question is right now, let's say for Watson's, which has a cafeteria and a ski shop and
Yes.
a coffee shop in it. We've paid category 8 one-time fee for that whole building. So with this new fee structure,
So you're-
we would still be paying the first application fee for the building. And then you're saying we would pay additional applications for each of those 3 businesses within it? Or just the one application
No.
for the building?
If you applied under a joint license for Watson's, say Watson's is the first one that comes across my desk.
Yep.
That one will be the first application. It can be a joint license application
it.
for all businesses in that one building.
Okay. I think the
Then-
second application was just confusing me. I got it.
Yeah, no, I can see why.
Yeah.
Then Alf's, that location. So think about it. It's very location specific.
Correct.
Think about Alf's as the second application and the Albin Grill is the third application.
Okay. That sounds good. Just curious.
So, am I okay to move on?
Yeah.
Just a quick question. So do other communities, other ski town communities like Park City sort of allocate their fees similarly? I know that might be a bit beyond the purview of what we were looking at here, but I'm curious if you know.
Aaron, maybe you can address that.
No, not that I could find, they don't have a system like this, but this is a unique situation with the enhanced services because what it mostly is trying to capture is the cost to the town for providing extra patrols. And those are required by specific categories. That's why you only see the enhanced service fee on just 2 categories, because those are the ones that we've identified as the ones that use those areas that bring a lot of commuters and parking. And then there's a need for additional patrols. So this is specifically geared to that, and how a Park City handles it might be different. Maybe they include that in just as not an enhanced service, but the town of Alta is saying, we know there's an additional cost here that we would like to try and at least say, hey, maybe we can get a little bit back because we're providing an enhanced service to these specific business categories for what they're bringing up the canyon into Alta. So Park City might have a little bit different, and other cities or towns that are ski towns may not have just one parking area that they see more need for. So this is kind of a unique situation in that way.
Thanks,
And I
Aaron.
can just, Park City, yeah, it's a totally different system in Park City. They don't have, but they also have like a transportation fee encompassed in it, which goes to that. Their fees are quite a bit higher. We don't know exactly what it is because it's based on skier days, which is protected information, but it's in well over $10,000 for their business license.
Okay, so on this screen, which I sent you, this is Appendix A, and this is what we decided to recommend to the town council to consider. So you'll see here we have the first application, and then you have the second application. And what I tried to explain that I hope made sense to everybody is that with categories, every category except for 1 and 8, which is the lodges and the ski area, the results that came out of the study had a maximum fee that we could charge that's less than what we currently charge. And so we kept those numbers for the first application here. We kept those numbers at 100% for those categories. Now for the hotels in the ski area, what I tried to do, what I did was I found the sweet spot in the percentage of revenue that would allow us to get to our budget, which is $18,000. And so the result of these numbers here, and that is built into the second application fee too. Erin had a wonderful spreadsheet that allowed me to make these calculations. Now, these calculations are based on the application numbers that we received in 2020. So things could be a little bit different, but I think as far as projecting and budgeting, this would be the best that we could do to get to that minimum, to get to that budgeted amount of $18,000. So if the council's goal is to meet its budget that it's set, you need to charge at least what I'm proposing here on categories 1 and 8 specifically. Okay. And then we have, I wanted to make sure you guys had some tools to look at how, it changes from the existing fee, because there are some significant increases here. But we also just did a more in-depth study to what it takes to be managing these licenses and whatnot and the additional services. I think part of the rationale, though, for not charging the full amount for these licenses, there's a number of reasons. One, we felt it would be too big of an increase right off the bat. That they also do provide in-kind services to the community. And then the third major one that we had discussed in this was that these businesses also do provide sales tax to the community. And so those should all be things that we take into consideration when setting our fees.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Let me start by disclosing a conflict of interest, since I work at Alta Lodge, which is a company that pays business license fees, and not to put too fine a point on it, would see a heavy increase on this proposal. Did Zion's analyze what was the difference in the thinking from the last Zion's study that supported the fee amounts that we see there in the existing fee column?
Can I jump in there for a second, Aaron, and just point out to you, Cliff, that what we have been paying is not necessarily what the Zion's analysis showed as the maximum amount one could pay. So just like if we were to have this conversation again in 5 years, if these recommendations were to be accepted and the ski area was being charged, let's say, $4,100, you wouldn't see in that $4,100 that the maximum allowable under this analysis is $9,200. So I'm just pointing out that. So Aaron can go ahead and answer your question about what the last study showed.
Let me maybe clarify my question then. On all of the other categories other than 1 and 8, apparently the last Zion study that was done, I guess in 2013 or so, supported a much higher allowable amount. And so what's the analysis of where the last study, I guess, got it wrong?
I don't think it's got it wrong. I think that's not framing it right. I think that was the analysis that was correct at that time based on the staff time, the resources, everything that went into managing the business licenses. It was good as of that point. At this point, we've looked at it. Systems have changed. We do things differently in the town now. And we also pulled data that wasn't previously available to look at some of these things for the disproportionate and the enhanced services.
One thing that we did was we invested in some better software too, for example. But Aaron, maybe you have another answer besides the one that Jen and I just gave.
No, I think you guys kind of hit on exactly what I would say. If I just pulled up the old fee study, and previously the ski area category was still not quite as high as it is now, but the fee that was enacted is probably 10% of what we had well, a little over 10% of what the last business license fee study said the total maximum fee could have been. So we haven't changed much. Some of like what Jen was saying, so both what the mayor and Jen said are correct. The town is always free to consider what the changes are and just charge less. And that looks like that's what they chose to do last time in some cases. And also things have changed. There are some efficiencies that have become better. That's why some of the prices are going down on the base administrative costs. But there's also more information now about disproportionate service charges. Last time we did this report, there was a lot more in it about inspections done by the fire service, the fire authority, and that's not even applicable anymore. So things change as it goes on. But now we're able to look more at disproportionate services in terms of police calls, whereas last time that was not available. So these things become more available. It's been a couple of years and the town has advanced in what it has in terms of data available to analyze this. And as that becomes more available, they can refine and find more ability to capture the costs and say, this is what it actually costs the town. So that's what's really changed the most.
And how long of a window is studied here? This is 3 years, right? Or the last 3 years?
We looked at 2 years of data.
Okay. So another thing that could happen to make this change is you could have an anomalous year or two back in 2013 where one of the small lodges, I'm just making this up, but just as a potential kind of explanation, had more police calls than it has had in the last couple of years, for example. I think that part of the impetus for doing this and having a little bit different, having a somewhat different allocation was to try to understand, our police department's a pretty big part of our budget. And I think that that's where the enhanced fees come from. The disproportionate fees are largely from the police department.
So my only worry is that we've had a lot of categories go down in their percent of their charging. And that I get because we have a maximum we can only charge based on the study.
Right.
But because we're trying to meet a budget dollar amount, I'm a little worried that category 1 and category 8 are being a little penalized to make up for that budget. I get that those are big categories, but another thing to consider too is that Alf's restaurant and Watson's don't require police services. They're up on the snow and our police don't patrol those buildings. So, I mean, there's just things that I'm a little worried those two businesses are getting charged a little bit more based on this 35% of the maximum amount, just because we're trying to make up for our budget. And so I just wanted to state that.
I think that is insofar as it goes, it's an accurate statement, at least, that because the other ones went down and the budget was fixed because we looked at our previous year's revenues from business licenses. And so we carried that forward, and one could adjust that budget amount and change the budget in the budgeted amount in an amendment to the budget. I will just point out that what they're doing is getting less of a decrease percentage-wise relative to the actual marginal costs for these services that are being incurred by the town. Now, and the reason to do that is, as we did in the past, and as Jen said, these businesses generate plenty of sales tax. And so I appreciate the various considerations that go into saying what they should cost. All right, well, it is 3:30, so maybe we should move to the second topic for our work session. And I'm glad that we got to consider these different questions. I think they're important. And this is on the agenda for the meeting, so we'll see what we decide to do. Does that make sense to everybody? Aaron, are you sticking around for our town council meeting too? Or coming back?
I don't believe I am.
I had just asked him to be there for this part because I figured this was the.
Yeah, I think that it's pretty clear how these numbers got generated, and then it's a policy question of where we go forward. And so it's not really Aaron's responsibility to make those decisions. Unless you're going to move to Alta and run for
I know the town is full of considerate people who really think things through, and you guys will make the right choice. Hopefully the study that we provided you gives you the information you need. That's the goal. So
okay.
Thanks, you've
Aaron.
been very responsible with this. I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Have a good rest of the day.
Okay, thanks, Jen, for putting that up. I'm sure we'll be putting that back up later.
I'll keep it available.
Okay, the environmental impact listening session. I'm guessing, Chris, do you want to lead that conversation, or is that somebody else?
I'm unmuted. I don't have anything thoroughly prepared to unfurl at this point, but I know that last week when we were finalizing the agenda, we acknowledged that with this being our final regularly scheduled town council meeting prior to the close of the comment period, and with the listening session having taken place 2 weeks ago today, I believe it was, that the council would benefit from some debrief of what occurred in the listening session, and talk about next steps as we move forward in the EIS process. So I don't have a tabulation of comments from the listening session, but I know, Mayor, that was kind of your idea about how to focus the discussion. Of course, we did, the way the listening session went was that we had about 40 people on the call, 38 people, I think, which included, most of the town staff, most of the council, and a number of community members. And we had pretty well engaged discussion, both in the sort of opening session where folks signed up to sort of make 2-minute statements, and then more open conversations in small group breakout rooms that we facilitated via Zoom. And then I think the mayor was calling it a plenary session, and I don't know exactly what the definition of plenary is, but it was a nice plenary session at the end where I think some folks kind of appeared to have considered each other's opinions and feelings on the EIS. So it was a great session. We didn't conclude it with a plan for what to do about it. So
yeah, plenary just means everybody coming back together.
Okay.
We got some feedback after that listening session that was all that I've seen has been positive about the occurrence of that session. People were happy about that, and I think people were pretty happy with the way that not only that they got to express their opinions, but got to hear from other people. And so I think that was valuable. I'll just reflect a couple of additional thoughts. One is 2 big takeaways for me, and I think these both make sense, especially this first one, is that proceeding on a construction project to change transportation in the canyon without understanding the implications of bringing more people into the canyon is a little bit putting the cart before the horse. And it would be interesting to have I think it would be very interesting to have the visitor use study that the Central Wasatch Commission has commissioned beforehand. And I think other people felt that way. A number of people said that. And the other thing that I heard that I thought gave me a lot to think about was I think people wanted an alternative that I don't know if everybody, but a plurality, I guess I would say, would have been happy with just more buses on the existing road. And I didn't get the sense that, I don't have the sense that UDOT still thinks that's in the mix. But I have heard from members of the Central Wasatch Commission that they are going to urge the Central Wasatch Commission, which has a special meeting coming up. I wrote it down from my mayor's report on the 23rd about the EIS and how to respond to it from the Central Wasatch Commission. I'm confident that some of the commissioners are going to urge a response that says we should be doing something incremental. So, tolling attraction law, let's see how that works. And then let's see what else we need. And I heard some comments along those lines in the listening session. Then I also heard some things that just need to be corrected. Like after the listening session, I think it was, I got an email that said, obviously the ski area needs to build a multi-level parking structure where the Wildcat parking lot is. And I just want to say for us and for anybody who watches this either now or later, that there are constraints that have to be understood. And so the Forest Service said no to the ski area about constructing more parking. I don't know what the Forest Service would say to a parking structure, but just the idea that this is a decision, that these are decisions that are unconstrained by other jurisdictions it's just not the situation that Alta finds itself in. Do the other council members want to share their reactions or thoughts about that session?
I thought it was very fruitful. Thank you to everyone who helped organize it on such short notice. Thanks for getting behind it, Mayor. And part of my takeaway, I felt overwhelmingly many constituents said that they think some sort of human capacity study is long overdue and is the first order of the day. I thought people were very thoughtful and gracious towards each other, but had well thought out views. But I heard that consistently, along with the idea that the Alta Town Council and leadership should reflect the interests of the homeowners as well as the many constituencies that we serve. I thought that was an important viewpoint to raise. I also appreciated your thoughts about how much adding lanes of highway changed where you grew up and how that is a radical shift.
Thanks, Sheridan. Anybody else want to make a comment? So I guess, Chris, you want to talk about what the next steps for the town are going to be? You and I need to talk. I've been putting my classes together. I've been teaching this week in our executive MBA program. And next week I don't have classes, but the 23rd is my first day of the semester. So we need to talk next week, I guess.
That's fine. Yeah. So, since I got to the town, since I started working for the town, which was about 8 years after I got to town, so to speak. But since I became a Town of Alta employee, I've been probably the most consistent representative of the town or participant on the town's behalf in projects like Mountain Accord. The Central Wasatch Commission, the mayor has really taken the lead. Obviously, he's on the commission, but I've been involved at a staff level in CWC affairs and other realms where transportation and transportation planning are the topic. And so I have prepared the first draft of Town of Alta letters providing comments on previous milestones in the EIS. And similar to how a lot of other local governments participate in processes like these, and similar to how participating agencies in this particular project have drafted comments, I've tried to focus on providing comments to UDOT about ways in which our unique expertise in providing the municipal services that we do provide impacts from the shape of the proposal at a given milestone on our service program at the town, and also on elements of the proposals at various milestones that we have just kind of a unique perspective on, given our experience in Little Carbon Canyon. So I've done that. We've provided letters on 2 milestones of the EIS so far: the purpose and need chapter and the alternatives chapter. And I just know we provided some comments on the way that a gondola would interface with the avalanche control program in Little Carbon Canyon that I know were like really, it changed the way that UDOT move forward to sort of plan at a high level the way that all the transportation systems they've evaluated would function in Canyon. So with that experience, I have been spending a lot of time reviewing the EIS chapters. I feel like I understand at a high level, the way the analysis was conducted. I understand the alternatives pretty well. And I have been jotting down in a fairly informal fashion the elements of a comment to UDOT from the town that would be similar to those letters that I've already provided. So just comments on technical aspects of the alternatives, places where the analysis is might be deficient or lacking certain information about facilities in Alta, et cetera. So I am working on that. I don't know if it's I'm not sure it's the direction that we're going to want to go with an official letter to UDOT on the EIS at this stage in their analysis. But it is something that I'm working on, and that I hope is something that the town can support. And if it's not, then we can take a different direction. I do think it's essential for the town, like other participating agencies in the EIS, to provide a comment that focuses on technical aspects of the proposals and why, ways in which they might need to be updated or are, the analysis is deficient, things like that. So that's what I've been focusing on, and I think that's the extent to which we have kind of a response to the draft EIS developed.
And one reason to have a response is so that we continue to essentially have standing in the process as it goes forward. So we'll definitely be submitting something for that reason, if for no other reason.
Well, and maybe to get Chris a little bit off the hook here, people have been saying the town should provide a response for our residents and inhabitants. There's no way he can do that, because there were numerous, we don't have a unified front. amongst the town on all of this. So that's the difficult thing that we're dealing with right now in the response. So, which is why Chris mentioned technical or deficiencies in the study, but it's not going to be an easy response.
Well, if we don't have more to say on this topic right now, I mean, we can talk about the business license study some more, or you know, wait until 4 o'clock to resume the town council meeting.
Chris, may we see some of the rough draft ideas of the town's response?
I haven't written anything down yet.
What's that?
I haven't written anything down.
Right, and what I've been working on is not, it's not in a format that you would be proud of. I'll say that. I mean, it's it's not ready, but I don't have a reason, that we would share that once it's a little bit more cooked. It's just like it's notes basically, and our comment on the purpose and need did incorporate some comments about the need to understand capacity. And so that I have basically just folded that over into this document. That's kind of the most like fleshed out, thing that I have. So, and then I have some notes. So I mean, that will yes, I don't have a reason not to share that. So.
Chris,
Mike, it looks like you have something to say.
Yeah, I wanted to add that Chris is waiting on some technical comments from me, and I really haven't landed firmly on how I want to present those. So forthcoming.
Okay. Well, let's talk about, we got 15 minutes. Let's talk about the business license study.
Margaret wants to make.
Could I comment further on this question? I think, Chris, that your statement and idea that the town fully support what the statement is that's going to be made regarding this is something that I hope will be the case. And to the extent that, I agree it may be difficult to come up with a comprehensive report that everyone will agree on, but is there a possibility of coming up with a report, a response that maybe is more narrowed so that all could agree? And that would be something that potentially provides more weight to have both the mayor and council members sign the document as well. So I agree that having all of us come up with all of our ideas and having them all align perfectly is an impossible job. But could we come up with something, as you say, that talks about the uniqueness of Alta that we all might be able to agree upon, even if there was a separate area that we couldn't all agree on, that we would either leave out or carry in a different way?
I think that the town council members, it's not on our agenda for this meeting, but the town council members could support the pillars that the Central Wasatch Commission identified. I think that would be helpful. And I think that those are not likely to be very controversial amongst the town council.
Can I make one more comment, Mayor?
Sure.
I am confident that the notes that I've been taking in my review of the draft EIS, that I'm confident the council would appreciate the concerns that I've raised, and that I wouldn't be. I mean, I'm not preparing to make a strong statement of support for a particular alternative. I'll put it that way, because I don't like we've all been discussing. It's not necessarily the kind of input that UDOT needs at this stage. And I certainly I think we'd all agree that in that listening session there wasn't clear that, aside from I think the points that each of you raised about what was consistent in our dialogue, things like support for understanding visitor capacity, support for incremental improvements. Those are those are like widely held positions in the community. It's easy to relate those to components of the proposals or the draft EIS in a number of ways. And so that's another thing I've been focusing on is where do some of those common themes from our discussion a couple of weeks ago appear in the document, or how does the document not align with those things?
Okay, well, anything else, or should we spend a few more minutes on the, I know that I'm sure we haven't exhausted the conversation about the business license study, and we have a policy decision that's going to come up. So why don't we, maybe Jen, you can put those numbers.
Sounds
back there.
great. Okay. Let's see, I was on, so next, I'm just gonna pick up kind of in my notes where we left off. One of the things that we do wanna consider when setting fees is comparables. And so there was a chart in the draft study, and then we had received a request to include specific locations. And so this was done here. This was a request made specifically by Sheridan, but I'm sure everybody appreciated the information in this. So Sheridan, was there anything that you wanted to comment on this or ask about it?
Thanks, Jen, just looking at it as we're talking.
Okay, had you gotten a chance to look at it in before this meeting?
I have,
Okay.
Thank you, yes. My overall concern a bit about the study has to do with, and this has come up in conversation with other council, has to do with what seems like rather arbitrary decisions around who gets charged what and why. So that's why I wanted to look at comparables geographically within Utah. What do other ski towns do? How do they break this out? How do they look at externalities that maybe governance is picking up? And so that, and those are larger questions that I find I'm going to need some time to process in looking at this data, particularly in light of, and this was shared with me by Councilwoman Burke's excellent research, Harris and Marabee's last assessment of the previous Zion studies in 2013. And the drill downs that were done there that weren't done here, I'd like a little time to look at that excellent work and then also see if we can bring that forward. I know we're under a bit of a time constraint with regard to October being, I think, the month that we charge these fees, but that's my overarching concern.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. So just maybe to react for that for a minute, as the person that kind of was working with Zions, I would say that the results of this study are anything but arbitrary. Everything was based on a chart and an analysis of staff time, of resources. I mean, if you go back into the study and look at the calculations of how these numbers were determined, I mean, my opinion is not that it was arbitrary at all. I don't know though, and I'd be curious to understand what you're referring to as far as Marabee and somebody else's analysis though, and why that was, where that comes into play in those questions. So
let me apologize.
That's
Can you
okay.
hear me?
Yeah.
Because arbitrary is a triggering word. And that is not my intention to make as my final assessment of looking at the study. But for instance, it seems odd to me that we allow, it makes sense in some ways, in other ways, it seems odd to me that we allow a business to have a lesser fee if they have multiple businesses under the same roof. It seems odd to me that there are just some questions. And so with regard to the drill down that I'm describing with Harris and Marabee's work on the Zion 2013 study, they took a look at full-time employees at the lodges. There are a number of other categories that use the data that Zion's had come up with, and then went a little further. I'm a little curious as to why we didn't take that step, although I think that, again, I want to commend your excellent work. I'm not trying to suggest that.
I wasn't taking it personally, Sheridan. It was no worries, no worries. I was just trying to articulate a point of how the data and how the results came about.
Yes, and I appreciate that.
And
In case that
I'll
was
add that I
missed.
don't think that there are, I think that the whole endeavor was to avoid externalities, Sheridan. That's the whole point here, is to show what the cost actually is to the community, at least as measured by factors like staff time and policing. And that's so I agree with Jen that it wasn't arbitrary, and I'm not sure why you think there are uncaptured costs that are being externalized from these numbers. Do you have
I don't know.
any data to support that?
I don't know
My
if
question. Oh, sorry. Please go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna add my thoughts about it, that this kind of came about historically. Why we pursued this was because citizens had communicated with me about how we were moving from UFA to UFSA, and was there a way for the town to cover those costs rather than the property owners themselves who didn't have a business cover those. And so there was this whole proposal you're all aware of that Rick Haskell did. And then we chose not to go down that path and instead went to Zion's Bank. But the study that Zion's Bank did was limited to April of 19 to March of 21, a pandemic. So I don't know if that accurately reflects non-pandemic costs, or maybe that's impossible to tell where we are. That we also have, the only thing we looked at was the police costs. We didn't look at recycling, which I think disproportionately affects some businesses. Some don't use it at all. I think that they're both the ski area and one of the lodges don't use the town recycling, and yet that's a $20,000 expense that then is borne inequitably by the residents and the other businesses. There may be other kinds of indirect costs that we're talking about. For example, the 20,000 or so for legislative costs that we've put in there. And so the question I have are kind of, they're detailed, and yet I've lacked the understanding to know if the concerns that I have been addressed somewhere else, because yes, it was presented to us, but we haven't had a chance to really dig in and explore it the way I think you and Marabee did, Harris, in 2013 from the draft report that you got from Zion's, and then work through what the different potential alternatives were before the council voted on coming up with the fees that were eventually adopted.
So just, I don't know if we want, I'm happy to address a couple things that you just said, but I know it's 2 minutes before the council meeting, so I'm not sure how we want to.
Go ahead and take the 2 minutes.
Okay, so we did discuss, certainly when we decided that it was going to be looking back over the course of 2 years, Margaret, and we reviewed those years, and I mean, yes, it was a decision to kind of accept that those 2 years were not significantly different than previous years. And the only business that there was one business that did not get a business license that did the previous years that we know of in the community. That's a main business, and that's the Shallow Shaft Restaurant. I'll just say that. They didn't operate this past winter. Other than that, everybody else operated. We always have fluctuations in the single family rentals. So that's not something that I think was impacted heavily. So I do feel like while the 2-year in the pandemic on the surface appears that it could be concerning, because we felt that it would be and maybe wanted to actually look back farther. I don't think that that was a bad choice personally. I think those 2 years were pretty fairly average years, and 1 or 2 businesses is not, when you're talking about averages, going to throw your numbers off that significantly. And
No,
then,
it's a question of whether or not the police during that time period were more or less involved than typical because of the fact that this was an area that was open. And so maybe the number of calls were higher than they would be in a typical year, or lower, or the same.
I think, didn't they, my understanding of the study was that they used a 4 or 5 year average. They didn't just go off of last year.
no, it was 2 years.
It was 2 years. Okay.
Everything was based on a 2-year. So that we had we were looking at the same time frame on across the board.
Okay, well, I'm gonna point out it's 4:00 now, so we should start the town council meeting or take our 1-minute break like we do. I will say that, we've been in this process for a while. We've reported on some of this process to the town council for a while. If it had been important to include recycling, I think that should have been brought up before. And if a 2-year window wasn't acceptable to the town council, that should have been brought up before too. I feel like sometimes the staff is doing an awful lot of work and then being, frankly, I think really second guessed in an unfair way, right at the finish line on some of these projects that they get involved in. Do you want to take a break for a minute and come back? Or should we just keep going? Well, I suspect we may end up needing, I'll need a break after a little while if we keep going. Okay, I'm gonna, why don't we come back in 2 minutes? Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Okay, do we have a quorum? We do. All right. So it is the Alta Town Council meeting. I'm going to call to order the Alta Town Council meeting of August 11th, 2021. We've already during the work session had an anchor location statement read. So the first item on our agenda is citizen input. Piper, what did we receive? Or Jen?
We didn't receive any written comment in advance, and I do have one person that would like to make a comment,
Okay.
but I'm not seeing that they've joined the meeting. Margaret, is your husband with you?
Yeah, he is. He was trying to sign on his own, but if necessary, he can use my my link.
I'm not sure how that works. I know he wanted to make a comment, so just trying to provide the opportunity. Is there any concern about that, Polly?
No, that's
Okay,
fine.
yeah. I
So
would
you
think
can
that would be
you can
fine.
join on mine.
No, it won't let me sign.
So over here. I'll let you.
Musical
Fortunately-
chairs. Thank you, Roger.
Yeah, fortunately, we have a
Okay.
backup plan.
There we go. Go ahead.
Difficult. Okay, I participated in the listening session, which I thought was wonderful. And then I went back because I was so intrigued by it and listened to the recorder. And what I found on the recorder is that my voice was blocked because of technical difficulties, not because of anyone interceded. But I made some points that I'd like to make again because they didn't come back. First of all, that the terminal for the gondola that is envisioned in the EIS is between the Rustler and the Alta Lodge. It's above the transfer tow, below the road, and has the same footprint as all of the buildings in the Alta Lodge put together. So it's a big building. It doesn't, there's no information that I could find in the 1,000 pages, which I have to admit I did not go through carefully on what the height of this building is, but it's a big building. Now, then there are the towers. The first tower going down the hill is just above the town park. It's 130 feet tall, which is about the height of a 10-story building. And the next tower going down the hill is essentially in the nature trail between Powder Ridge and the Collins Base. It's 230 feet tall, which is the height of a 20-story building. So think about that in comparison of the stuff that's around here. The Cliff Lodge is 13 stories high. So this tower would be about half again as large as the Cliff Lodge. And these are not really just poles like a lift tower or a flagpole. These are big structures like those that are on the Snowbird tram. You might have noticed outside today, there are a couple of yellow balloons flying. Those balloons are tethered at the sites of those two towers, and the length of the tether is the height of the tower. So when it's calm, those balloons represent the top of the towers at the one above the town park and the one above the nature road, respectively. They are big. The EIS describes the visual impact on Alta town as high. I would say that that's an understatement. I would call it extraordinary. Also at the listening session, I thought that Dan Schilling's remarks were really thought-provoking. He pointed out that a major structure becomes an iconic image of a place, and he used two examples, the Sydney Opera House and Chernobyl, which I might add the San Francisco Oakland Bay Bridge.
Roger,
And-
can you wrap up? Sorry, we're getting close to time, but I want to let you
Okay,
finish.
and the Surfside, Florida condo. So Alta's would be known as the end of the world's longest gondola. I think these slots ought to be taken into consideration when we make some sort of comment on this as a town.
Thanks, Roger.
Thank you.
I recall seeing a diagram from you, Roger, by the way. I don't know if that was at the listening session or at a town council meeting, but I know that you've made those comments on the record. So just an FYI that I'm confident they're in some record, public record. Now a second time. Okay, anybody else? Jen?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. The next item on our agenda is the Alta ski area update from Mike Maughan.
Mike doesn't appear. Oh, no, he did just
No,
join us.
he's here.
Oh,
He's-
great. That must
He's
have been
driving. I
missing.
want to, or maybe you're stationary. I can't quite tell. Well, it looks like you're driving, Mike. You got to unmute. And if that's your phone, Jen,
*6.
if you've called in on the phone line.
Oh,
That
let's
looks like
see.
he's got the Zoom app to me.
I'm asking to unmute in case that assists.
Can you hear me
Okay,
now?
We
Yeah,
can.
I can hear you, but please be careful.
Well, I'm just driving back to my office. I'll be there in a few minutes.
Don't speed. We have police in our tech community.
Oh, I'm just driving by that speed thing right now, and it says I'm under the speed limit.
Okay, good.
I can give you a quick little update. You know, we are in the process of we're continuing to work on our summer projects here. You may notice that the Corkscrew Ninas projects, hopefully in the next 2 or 3 days, we will have most of the grading done, be on to revegetation and then working on some of the snowmaking on the upper end. We've started to lay down the revegetation materials. As far as our Wiesen project up on the East Castle, we have the footings have all been poured, waiting for the actual physical Wiesen towers to arrive. They're somewhere in transit. Once they're here, they will be flown by helicopter up there. If you've looked in the parking lot here, you see these big X-type structures in our Wildcat parking lot. Those are the snow fences that will be placed above Devil's Castle Road in some slide paths to retain snow so that we don't have to use explosives anymore in those areas. And they will be, there's some drilling and pinning that will still need to occur once those are put in place. We're in the process of expanding the powder cache makeup room up on Peruvian Ridge. That project is underway and working through it. Beyond that, we're just we're working on maintenance. We're working on a fair amount of planning. Some of the things that we are looking at for next year. One of those issues is the replacement of the Albion and Sunnyside lifts. We're looking to potentially replace those both with a one share next summer. We've got Cirrus is here this week doing some of the environmental work. Canyon Heritage has been here for several weeks doing environmental work for that project, as well as some of the others, little projects that we anticipate trying to tackle next year in that realm. We have also been reviewing the 1,000-page EIS report and listening to a lot of comment and feedback. I'm close to having my comments ready to submit to UDOT. Today, we went out with a little newsletter to all of our pass holders, encouraging them to, if they have interest, to provide some constructive comment and just reiterating our our position, which continues to be, we are supportive of anything that we can do in this canyon to improve transportation and reduce congestion. We did make the point that the primary cause of congestion in this canyon is weather. The days that we had 12 days of significant congestion last year. Only 2 of those days had visitation over 5,000 people at Alta. All the rest were in the 4,000 or 3,000 range, kind of indicating and helping to highlight that the transportation issue is driven primarily by the road. And when it gets slick, we have congestion. And when it gets slick and it closes and snowbird's able to merge onto the road before we can out of Alta, we have congestion. Of the alternatives presented, the gondola one, it addresses those issues better than buses. Both of those have a lot of issues and concerns for everyone. But we would say if we had to choose out of those 2, our preference would be the gondola solution. We would hope that UDOT would consider other interim improvements, some of the low-hanging fruit to implement in the short term, because we think we're still 3 to 5 years out before either of these solutions or another solution could be implemented that's there. Let's see. We are proceeding. We met again today with interstate parking. That's basically a weekly meeting we have, and they gave us an overview today of the software that they put together, and we're
Good.
continuing to provide some feedback to them regarding that. We're starting into the testing mode these next few weeks, and really trying to make sure that everyone's on the same page as to scope and functions and features that are necessary for us to accommodate what we have planned to do with pass holders and others. I would tell you I'm not exactly where I'd like to be with them. We'd like to be a little further down the road, but we continue to move forward, and that no significant red flags have arisen to this point in time. We are anxious, recognize and appreciate the town's work on parking and trying to resolve the issues within the town for overnight parking and north side parking. And we're anxious and encourage the town to move forward as quickly as you can. We'd like to get that an MOU in place with kind of solidifies that concept of the north side parking is managed by the town and the rest is managed by the ski area, so that we can respond out to those other parties that involves also that's there. But recognize the challenges and hurdles you have at the process too to get there.
Well, Mike, we are scheduled at 5 o'clock to hear an update from our consulting firm on our parking project. So
Great.
I'm glad to hear of your progress, and I think that as we've discussed, we move slower than a business, but we do have a progress report for you today. For everybody.
Great.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for, Chris Calley and Mike Morey and yourself. It's been great having the interaction and trying to work through these issues and together. So we appreciate that very much.
Yeah, Chris and Mike have done an awful lot of work on this. I really appreciate their hard work.
That's probably I would tell you that from a sales standpoint, our season pass sales are trailing a little bit last year and the year before. Icon, Epic, and Mountain Collective sales are all up double digits, 30 to 40% in their respective markets, kind of indicating there's continued to be a significant migration out of two multi-resort products. So it's a concern. We are in the process of having discussions with Icon about the criteria under which we would require, should we continue to remain engaged with them in some form beyond this next season.
Okay. I'm sure you're aware that Vail has a new CEO.
Yeah, I kind of had heard that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see where that goes.
Yeah.
There's a few changes. I mean, Sinclair Oil is divested. Well, Sinclair Oil is no longer part of what's the name of that family that owns Sinclair? They sold Sinclair Oil, but they retained their hospitality, Grand America, and their ski areas.
The
So that was a
Holdings.
change. Yeah, the holding family. Yeah. That was a change that happened recently too. That's probably a really quick summary of the things we have going on. Any questions, anything I can answer for the town council?
I had two questions related to what you've talked about so far, Mike. Thanks for the summary. When you talk about the Albion Basin, the Albion lift and the Sunnyside lift and potentially replacing them with a single lift next year, will there be an EIS necessary? Because I thought that the Albion was taken out of the prior EIS analysis that you did before. And then secondly, regarding the MOU, would that be an MOU you're anticipating between the lift company and the town, or is that the typical MOU that would involve the Forest Service as the owner of that land and the town of Alta?
This would be an MOU between the ski area and the town of Alta. Just this Forest Service has indicated that we've given them a preliminary outline of the terms of the MOU, and they've indicated they could support that. They don't see a need for them to be in that. It's really, we have a special use permit, and it's just a way we've determined to manage a portion of that special use permit. And they're comfortable with that.
Right.
So the intent would be between the town, between the ski area, and then we would have some other agreements with some of those private landowners on the Alta Lodge and the Wrestler, apart from that, separate from, so we can just have a simple agreement between the town and the ski area. On the EIS, the environmental assessment we did in 2017 included replacement of the Sunnyside lift, and you're correct, is at one time in there was removal of Albion, and that was dropped at that point in time. The Forest Service has told us that we will need to submit a categorical exclusion for the removal work of the Albion lift. Don't see that being an issue per se. That's part of the NEPA work that we have, environmental work we have going on right now. We just had our environmental specialist walk the Albion lift line yesterday, look at every tower location. He's doing a wetland delineation on a couple of towers that potentially have some wetland associated with them. But really, on the Albion side, all we are is removing the lift and trying to remove all the signs of that there had been a lift there. So removing it, returning it back to its natural state in the terrain. Most of that work is done on the snow or via helicopter. The hardest part that has the most impact that we would see is actually removing the bases, the tower bases, the concrete footings. And our plan at this point in time is to remove them, to go in like we did for Secret on the snow with a piece of equipment that can break up the footing and remove it. And then you cover a couple of feet down, and then you cover it with soil. And that's the protocol the Forest Service has recommended. So we need to just go through a process of submitting what we would plan to do, how we would do that. It is not contingent to do that as part of the replacing the Sunnyside lift. We could still replace Sunnyside under the EA, but we just like to do it all at the same time to minimize the impact and when we have equipment in the area. So that's what we're working towards.
Thank you. And the question I forgot to ask was related to the parking, and I don't know if it would be you or Mike Maury, but I've been getting questions from people who are commuting employees about when they get to communicate about what their situation is to the town, the employer, whoever it is. And so I would just like to be able to respond to those questions. And frankly, I have no idea.
I would encourage them to communicate with their employer. I mean, we're representing our employees in that situation, and we went to the businesses and assumed that they would, when we talked to them, we assumed they would be talking to their employees. I don't know if Mike Morey wants to weigh in on that differently.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you saw it, Margaret. I did email you last night with the same comment. We're trying to capture that data through employers.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Maughan and Maury. I meant Maughan. Okay, if you want to go inside, you go back to your office. We'll see you in a few minutes, I guess. Okay. The UFA in the person of Jay Torgerson. Chief.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me. It has been a busy summer for us. A lot of focus on wildland fire, both in fighting wildland fires and in prevention. We're lucky that we have not had to deal with much of that here in our immediate locale. A few that have been able to be taken care of rather quickly, but we have sent crews all over the West. We've sent crews to California, currently have crews in Montana. We had a task force up in Oregon, and then our wildfire division has been very, very busy this summer from Michigan early in the season, and they are engaged for 14 days straight. They have 2 days off to recover and then right back out. So they've been extremely busy this summer with fires, but luckily not here locally. So that's a good thing. Our urban search and rescue team sent a couple of our chiefs to Florida to assist with some of the operations and recovery efforts with the condo collapse in Florida. And you hear me talk about some of the things that we do where we send personnel out away from Utah. And what that does is it allows us to get great experience and bring that back in an effort to be prepared for any of these circumstances that could eventually happen here. So it is a good opportunity for our people to go and train and get exposed to things that they can bring back to our local departments here. Really appreciate the work and being involved with the ordinance process, getting prepared for the summer, both for outdoor fires as well as fireworks. Appreciate the engagement with all of the Alta staff and with UFA staff as well, working cooperatively to help with that. So thank you very much with your work there. July was a fairly busy month for us. We did have a lot of our staff engaged over the July holidays. Extra staff was on during those times to help mitigate any of the problems that may have arisen. On the July 4th weekend, we had 195 fireworks complaints over that weekend. We did have 33 fires in the valley, 14 of which were caused by fireworks. Over the July 24th holiday weekend, we did it significantly decreased in numbers. We had 15 total fires. Only one was caused by fireworks. So it was, we saw some improvement over the July holidays, but I think, a lot of the media that went out prior to the July holidays, asking people to be careful, asking them to forego the use of fireworks, I think it significantly helped. And the ordinances you all passed in your areas definitely helped as well. So we did have our pancake breakfast last week. Thank you for everyone that attended, and thanks to Alta Ski Lifts that allowed us to use the lot up next to the Albion Grill. Matt McFarland said he believes that we served between 120 to 150 people that morning. So that was a great turnout. I hope that everyone that was able to attend was able to speak with UFA personnel, as well as some of those partners that we have with Forestry, Fire, and State Lands. Had some people there that had really good background in wildfire, and we're able to hopefully help answer questions, and continue conversations are always welcome as we move forward. I know we had crews up there working this summer or that week in order to do some fuels reduction. That can certainly be done again. And we can also have crews come up to do site inspections for any of your homeowners or business owners, where we can give recommendations on how to reduce some of the fuels and help avoid some of the risks associated with wildfires. A couple of calls that have been rather lengthy that are related to recreational activities. We did have a call up on the castle where we worked with search and rescue, Alta Marshal's office. It was just an injured hiker, not severely injured, but any time somebody is injured in those remote areas, it takes a lot of time and personnel to get them out safely. And it is a lot of exposure to the personnel that works on those types of calls. But while it just took a long time, I've talked to Marshal Maury afterwards, and there are at times problems with Beck communicating with Central. When a call comes in directly to Beck, they don't always notify Central. And so that Mike and his personnel don't always get notified. And so we're trying to put together something where they have an automatic message. If there is anything that is occurring, that they are dispatching in the Alta area, that they are also making those notifications to the town of Alta, so they are aware that something is happening there. So that is a work in progress. We also had the weather event in the canyon a couple Sundays ago that again brought down a lot of debris into the roadways. It didn't cause any problems for us. Our battalion chiefs were up there making sure that if there was a problem where we needed to get fire engines or additional apparatus up to Alta, we were able to do so working with UDOT. But there was a time there where it would have been difficult to get apparatus up there until the road had been cleared. But I mean, we're familiar with that in the wintertime with some of the challenges we have as well. I think that's about it for UFA. Any questions for me that I can answer for you all?
Do you have call volumes for Alta versus the fires in the valley?
Yes, I do. So quarter three to date. So from July 1 until today, I just ran these numbers today. So July 1 through August 11th, 5 total calls. All 5 calls were medical calls. And if you all are interested in having a different type of breakdown for call volume by month or by quarter to date or by year or comparisons with past years, there's a lot of different things with the software that we have. It's called Intera. Happy to get with any of you individually or as a group and show you that software to see how you can look at the data a little more closely if you'd like.
Thank you, Jay, for the fuels reductions effort and for the breakfast. It was a lot of the latter was fun and both were appreciated. I especially enjoyed meeting there was a group of young, fit people up there, and they were the wildland crew, apparently. So
yeah, so that was our fuels crew, and that is. If someone is interested in becoming a wildland firefighter, that is one of the first steps that you could take. So there's some of our newer personnel, and it's where they can get exposed to a little bit of experience. They are also utilized anytime there's a fire within the Salt Lake area. So that crew is reserved for the Salt Lake area. They don't travel out to fires anywhere else. So they're always available to respond and assist with any of the fires that we have in the Salt Lake Valley. So we did have a fire right at the mouth of Carly's Canyon this last week, and that was one of the crews that was able to respond and assist. And you know, our station crews respond immediately, and so they would have about a 5 to 10 minute response before they're on scene with their equipment, able to start extinguishing the fire. The fuels crew, like you said, they're young, they're fit, they have specialized training and how to use hand tools and how to deal with fire in that way. So that is one of the first steps that someone would take to becoming a wildland firefighter.
Okay, well, thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. For the June 30th special meeting about the fireworks, and July 14th town council minutes, the treasurer's report, and the staff reports. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, any discussion?
So I
Okay.
would like to move, strike the paragraph that references an edited version of my thoughts with regard to the Peruvian Estates parking ordinance. I've sent on my representation of my perspective, and I've sent that to Pipe. I'd like to substitute that.
Piper, have you reviewed that and found it what Sheridan is suggesting to be consistent with the audio recording?
No, I received it about an hour ago, so I was not able to insert it or even compare it to what was in there. So I would ask the council to consider it. And if they would like to put it in, then where
So,
exactly do you
let me-
want it in there?
I would move to amend the motion that's on the table to approve everything but the minutes from, this is from the July 14th meeting. Is that right, Sheridan?
That's correct.
So I would exclude that from the motion that's on the table. That's my proposed amendment. And then we can take that up at the next meeting. I don't think it's reasonable to send changes an hour before meetings and expect it to be acted upon. But I do think that
Reasonable. However, I found that many minutes are heavily redacted and rarely accurately reflect not just my perspective, but sometimes also other citizens. And so it becomes a moving target.
well, I think these were sent. When were these sent out, Piper?
These were late Monday morning, I think, because that's all the comments were expected to come in Sunday night. So I sent them out Monday.
Okay, so it is a little bit late. Normally, we try to send the minutes out the week before, don't we? Before
Yes.
these meetings.
Mhm.
So in any case, what I was going to say, finish my sentence, Sheridan, was that I don't think that in this case, there's any harm in just waiting until the next town council meeting to approve the June 14th minutes. So that's why I made that proposed amendment.
Thanks. I will compare, actually, Sheridan, if you tell me the exact paragraph you want to replace, I will compare them and get that out to the council.
Happy to. Thank you.
There needs to be a second to that amendment and a vote on the amendment to the,
I'll second it.
okay, any discussion? All those in favor of the amendment to drop the July 14th council meeting minutes from the approval of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, let's now go to the approval of the consent agenda, the main motion that's before us. Is there any further comment on that? Okay, shall we vote on that then? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that was unanimous. Okay, questions regarding departmental reports?
I remember you asked Harris in the July meeting for Mike Morey to talk to us more about the traction laws and what the status of that was something that was either working or not working, and what the status was in terms of the legislature adopting it or not. And so I wanted to follow up on that.
Do you have any update on that, Mike? We did not have we considered having an early road meeting, but we ended up not having that. But
Yeah, so I spoke with Sean Lambert, who's been our point of contact
Great.
with UDOT on that. And unfortunately, he doesn't have any forward progress to report. It seems to be stuck in their administrative rules committee.
okay. There are some significant forces who would like to see that passed, including the ski areas, and I think the Central Wasatch Commission. And I think UDOT would like to see that happen as well, right, Mike? Isn't that your impression?
Yeah, I think so. I think everybody that, has any kind of intimate involvement with 210 sees the need and the logic behind it. I think, as you climb the ladder and you get up to the state level, singling out an individual road in the system is problematic for them.
Yeah. I think UPD would support this, does support this too.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. So, maybe we can, I have when is this CWC meeting? Coming up, let me see. There's a special one on the 23rd, which has a different agenda. And then there's the usual one on the 13th of September. I'll mention it to the mayor's office in Salt Lake County and see if they're willing to help move that along too.
I wonder also, Harris, about Representative Bennion or Senator Cullimore or even Kathleen Reeby, even though she's not our representative. Of course, she potentially has that issue in Big Cottonwood. So maybe having some people in the legislature pushing it as well might help.
Yeah, the county, the reason I thought of the county was because they're our emergency management agency, but yeah, that's a good point. Okay. Anything else about the departmental reports? All right, the next thing is the mayor's report. I have it relatively short, I'd say. COVID case rate, I'll say something about COVID. We're still, as I said to my students the other day, finally, the University of Utah requested the faculty to wear masks indoors, which they had refused to make that request or recommendation for some time. And I think that gave faculty cover to actually set an example. So that has been helpful that they issued that. And I think any other agencies ought to do that, including us for that matter. The case rate in Salt Lake County for the past 7 days is up to 269. I reported on this, the number a month at the last town council meeting was 175. So we're not moving in the right direction. I looked this up this morning. 60% of adult Utahns are fully vaccinated. And of course, Utah has a lot of kids. So our overall rate is well below that. But even the 60% is below the national target. Just recently, Angela Dunn has requested that students wear masks when school starts. There's some complicated procedure about getting authorization to do that. I think that the county council, I don't know if they have to approve or if they have the opportunity to disapprove it tomorrow. So they are not taking public comments at that meeting, but they are taking public emails. So I would encourage anybody who is interested in this topic to write to the county council members, either our own or the at-large council members who represent us, or any of them, even the ones who don't represent us, and urge them to support Angela Dunn's effort. She's now the county health department director, no longer the state epidemiologist. We have a school, and I think that gives us standing to weigh in on this topic. kudos to everybody who participated in the listening session and the two on the two EIS transportation alternatives. I appreciated the good turnout and the good dialogue. We've already talked about that today. Also, thanks to Steve McIntosh and Mike Morey for their very quick response to a water leak at the Rustler Lodge on the 27th of July. So really I'm grateful to how dedicated our staff members are. I have voiced this. I don't remember if I said this in the town council meeting or if it was at the listening session, but one of my concerns about the gondola is that it makes the Olympics, it strikes me as making the Olympics more likely to be something that the Olympic organizing committee and fans of the Olympics would like to have in Alta or Little Cottonwood Canyon. Imagine the scene behind me with the Olympic rings up on Superior or some awful thing like that. So we took a stance, the town of Alta, against the having the Olympics in Little Cottonwood Canyon. The last time the Olympics were coming to Utah, I suggest that we might want to do that again. My main concern is that there won't be enough snow at the base of Snow Basin to hold the speed events and the ski races. And so they'll be looking for another venue. Pathways Associates has begun the fundraising feasibility study. We're not bound in any particular direction, but my understanding is they've already started to contact some of the people who we suggested that they survey. Parking studies in full swing too. We'll hear about that in just a few minutes. And I want to thank everybody for avoiding problems, at least in Alta on the 24th and earlier on the 4th of July as well. I attended several meetings last month, the UFS meeting on July 20th, really fireworks, review of the 4th and what was coming up on the 24th were part of the conversation. Fraud risk assessment was reviewed. The UFA is in the low category, so that's good, much better than before Chief Peterson joined as chief. We talked about the response to the Surfside building collapse and deployments as Jay Torgerson was talking about in the West Coast and in Montana. Reviewed the year-end budget information because we had better information in July than we did in June. Talked about wildland fuels mitigation and discussed moving data storage to the cloud, which would be an unanticipated expense. Apparently the hardware no longer is supported that stores the long-term archive data. A moving story that I heard at that meeting, you know, you hear things when you're part of the fire service that make your heart break a little bit. There was a Red Lodge, Montana firefighter who was caught in a fire. He's in Salt Lake City. I wasn't sure which burn unit, if there's one both at IHC and at the U. I don't know that, but he'll be spending at least the rest of the calendar year in the burn unit here in Salt Lake City. After the UFA meeting, the UFSA meeting comes up, and I'm learning that a lot of what the UFSA does is manage real estate because they own the stations. So there's a sale of an Eagle Mountain station that's being replaced, a lot line adjustment at Station 112, which is the one in Mill Creek, just off of Wasatch Boulevard there on the way up to just before Mill Creek Canyon. And how much is our share to retrofit stations that are no longer owned by the UFSA now that Riverton and Harriman are in the UFSA. July 22nd, the CWC Budget and Joint Visitor Use Task Force met. I'm on both of those bodies and recommended that the CWC move forward with the physical and environmental aspects of the visitor use study with the social science to be done next year, looking for sufficient outside funding. And then we had the listening session on the 28th. On the 2nd of August, there was a CWC meeting where they accepted that budget committee recommendation and moved forward. Also on the environmental dashboard, no COM meeting was scheduled in July, so there wasn't one of those. There's a COG meeting next year, which is the Council of Governments, which is a more formal body and takes 4 of the monthly meetings away from the Council of Mayors, which is a less formal body. So that's on August 19th. Just before that, on the 17th at 7:30 a.m. is the UFA meeting. COG meetings at 11:30 on the 19th. On the 23rd, there's a special CWC board meeting to talk about the CWC's response to the EIS. On August 24th, John, we have a planning commission meeting or no?
Sorry, muted. Like last month, we're still waiting to see if a couple of things come through in order to have substance for the meeting.
Okay. So we may have a
May have
planning commission meeting, and that would be at 3 o'clock on the 24th. So keep abreast of that development. And then the town council meeting is on September 8th. And I'll just, so because our town council meeting is a little bit early in the month and the CWC meeting is normally on a Monday and they don't want to do that on Labor Day, the CWC meeting for September is on the 13th. Temporary dog licenses issued with a start date between the 9th of July and the 5th of August include Ellie Johnson for 14 days, Amy Richardson for 1 day, Tricia Petzold for 14 days, Amy Youngstrom for 6 days, Kevin McDonald for 2 days, Holly Henriud for 1 day, and Julia Highmark for 7 days. Okay, any questions about any of that? No comments?
I'm sorry, I missed your comment that I understood about the social aspects on the visitor capacity study at CWC. Could you go over that again?
Yeah, so I'm going to not use the language of capacity study because it's not what we're calling it. So I want to be careful. So the visitor use study, as proposed, had 2 phases. The first phase was to understand the data that are readily available and may be useful. The conclusion of phase 1, the preliminary conclusions, we don't have a formal report yet. But we did hear about, this isn't the question you asked, Margaret, but I'll get to it. This is something I should have said and forgot to. The phase 1 preliminary results were presented, and basically the conclusion is, and I'm a little skeptical about the strength of this conclusion. I think it supports going forward on phase 2, which isn't a surprise since it's the same vendor for the services. But the conclusion from phase 1 is there is some data from, for example, trail monitors and parking and things like that, but that the data are not really usable for the kinds of projects that the CWC wants to engage on and understanding where people are going and correlating the number and timing of visitation with both physical and ecological and social effects. The physical effects include things like, are people filling up a parking lot and then parking on the road? The ecological effects include, for example, water quality measures. And then the social effects have to do with how people react to being in a place where what is their experience of the place? And a number of the people on the body, I would say that on the budget committee, all 3 of us, which are Jim Bradley, Jeff Silvestrini, and me, and I, all 3 of us had concerns about the likely success of the social aspects of the study. for reasons that I've articulated in here and in that meeting, those meetings at some length. And I'm happy to talk about it further if anybody wants me to. But what we decided to do, so two things happened in response to those concerns. One of those was some effort was made to coordinate with the Forest Service, which is about to do a study that includes these kinds of variables for the forest. And we are hoping that the vendor of the, our vendor of the phase 2 study will coordinate with the Forest Service and thereby bring down the cost by something in the order of $90,000. So that was good news that they seem to think that they can do that. We're waiting for a response from the Forest Service on that before they get back to us. We'll know that soon. So that was one thing that happened in the social aspect study, Margaret. And the other thing was, I think that the members of the budget committee were not too clear that it was really worth our money, given our concerns about the validity of what was going to come out of it. And so there are some entities that like Save Our Canyons that have offered to look to find some funding for that. And so we put some language into our recommendation that said, basically what we would like to see is a strong effort to have this funded by other entities and for the Central Wasatch Commission to make a judgment before going further down that path that enough support from outside entities has been generated to go forward. I felt like my main role on the budget committee was to say, I'm not sure this is a wise expenditure. And then as a commissioner, I felt like giving the commission the ability to make this decision once we see what the fundraising looks like, if somebody else is paying for it, then it seemed like an okay thing to me. And there were certainly constituents on the stakeholders committee and on the commission itself that wanted to see this go forward. Okay, did that probably answered a lot more than your question, frankly, but.
Sorry, that was good because that's part of what number of people, as you know, said at our listening session was that they wanted to have this visitor management or visitor opportunity study before the EIS came up with alternatives. And so understanding what was going on at the CWC level was I think, important to know.
Yeah, I think that the critical information about the physical and environmental effects of having people up, I think that actually can get done pretty quickly. And the social science aspect was going to be as I recall, it was going to be a little bit slower, number one, and number two, it wasn't clear that it was really going to be reliable. And my impression is that our concern is partly, I mean, I can understand why we would want to know how our visitors feel about encountering other visitors on a trail. That is interesting to know. If you could actually kind of read their minds and get that information, that would be interesting. But I think that my impression from our community is what they really want to know is what happens to the water, what happens to the trails, what happens to the moose.
Well, and I thought from your conversations years ago with District Ranger Hotsey that her objection to a visitor use management kind of study that we were thinking about or considered was the idea that the social was impossible to manage because my idea of 4,000 people on the trail is unacceptable and somebody else may think it's wonderful.
Yes, that's part of this. That's one of the sources of technically the inter-rater reliability is low. And not only that, it also seemed to me that within a person, it would be low as time went on, because how you feel in 2021, Margaret, about how many people you see on the trails is probably different than in 2010, just because you've adapted. And if it's not you who's adapted, I suspect some people will. And the other factor is that there's a kind of a replacement, or at least a supplement of people who are moving into the area from more crowded areas or more used to seeing more people. So there's a number of reasons to think that it's problematic. So I think that dovetailing our study with what the Forest Service wants to do anyway kind of helps blunt that concern by the Forest Service on top of all those other things. Okay, the next item on our agenda, and I'm glad that Chris Bender is here. Good to see you, Christopher, so that
Thank
we
you as well.
distinguish you from Chris Cawley. And Chris Cawley, why don't you introduce Christopher and explain what he's here to tell us, please?
Sure thing. Yeah. And I'll try to be really brief. So we do have Christopher, also known as Chris Bender, from Fair and Peers. He's the project manager of a team from Fair and Peers that we hired using funds we were awarded by Wasatch Front Regional Council 2 years ago now. The award was growing a little bit stale. We tried to launch a project focused on kind of updating some ideas we had for like pedestrian improvements, but just kind of we're hitting some brick walls, and this need to understand how to respond to the ski area fee for permit parking program arose, and we thought it would be a good use of those funds to bring in some outside expertise to help us design like a data collection effort, study some other permit programs and peer municipalities, and then help us kind of bring it to the public and wrap it up for town council consideration. So we have a parking component to the project. We have a parking demand management or transportation demand management component to the study. And Chris is mostly going to talk about the work that we've been doing to understand the demand for town of Alta managed parking this next winter. So Chris has some slides he's going to show on the screen to sort of aid his conversation with you all today.
All right, can everyone see the screen?
Looks good.
Okay. All right, thanks, Chris. As Chris mentioned, I'm Chris Bender. I work at Fair and Peers as a transportation engineer. And before we get started with this, I do want to be clear. This Town of Alta parking study that we're working on is the goal of it is to preserve some of the historical use that we see for parking throughout the town. We had some early survey results or surveys sent out, and some of the early survey comments that came back were concerned that we were taking parking away. That's not the case. We're trying to preserve the parking. And so, like Chris mentioned, we were contracted with the town to review the existing parking supply along the town managed areas, as well as the projected demand moving forward now that the ski area is looking to have a parking pricing program. This is particularly tricky as demand shifts about. And by the next meeting, we'll have developed a proposed parking plan for the town to help it manage that parking supply. Also, proposed parking plan, paid parking plan. There's a whole lot of alliteration going on, so apologies for that ahead of time. With the short time we have today, I want to cover 3 topics. First, I want to establish kind of the ground rules that we're working with. The United States Forest Service owns almost all of the land that people park on in Alta, and UDOT owns SR 210, the road there. So we've been coordinating with them to make sure that any parking plan we produce meets their needs. Second, I want to briefly review a couple of similar areas that can shed some light on the elements of a successful parking plan. And then last, I want to review some of the early parking data that we've received from surveys that were sent out last week. So while we're certainly expecting more data to come in, we're already starting to notice some early trends that are worth discussing in this meeting. And at that point, we'll open for questions. So please hold questions until that point. So coordinating with the United States Forest Service. It turns out since they own most of the public land in the area, they also control most of the parking. For example, all the space that people use to park at the base of Albion Basin Road is owned by United States Forest Service, as well as all of the ski area parking lots. Those are also owned by the USFS. The ski area is operating on a special use permit to manage the parking in those lots on weekends and holidays moving forward. For the town to manage the rest of the parking throughout the town, they will also likely need a special use permit. Sorry, not likely, they will need a special use permit. When we discussed what the United States Forest Service wanted to see in a parking plan, their main priority was equity. That means we need to be careful with restricting any user groups from having access to public parking on public land. However, that doesn't mean the USFS is requiring it to be a complete free-for-all when it comes to parking. Chris Colley and Mike Morey have been doing a really good job working with the United States Forest Service. And so far, the USFS have been supportive of our efforts to preserve historical parking uses in the area. After we contacted them, we worked with UDOT, and their requirements were quite a bit shorter. The big priority for them is that we do not impact traffic operations along SR 210 or safety. As of yesterday, we received word that they have no current objections to the town developing a parking plan. So our interaction with UDOT is likely to be fairly minimal moving forward, but we'll still have them in the loop as we go. So now I want to spend a couple minutes discussing parking plans in similar areas that have proven successful. The first one being in Springdale, Utah. Springdale is located just outside of Zion's National Park. They have paid parking areas for visitors on State Route 9 and throughout town on some of the key side streets near Zion. They have 3 visitor parking zones plus a residential only zone as shown in this map. Parking rates vary from $12 a day to $24 a day. And it ranges based on the zone. So for example, zone A, the light blue line, that's near the park entrance and has the highest fee. Zone C doesn't have a direct connection to the gate. There's no shuttle line that goes through there. That's where the oversized vehicles go. That one has the lowest fee. And the one in the middle is the green line. That's farther on the edge of town, but it does have a shuttle that runs directly to the gate. That one's somewhere in the middle. Residents are allowed to apply for 2 parking permits per year, and that permit grants them access to on-street parking within just that residential zone. It's not a blank check to park wherever they want as long as they want. Employees of the area are assumed to park either on-site at their business due to minimum parking requirements throughout the area, or use their own residential parking permits to park in the residential zones. The second location that we wanted to look at is Breckenridge, Colorado. At this location, visitors must park in paid reserved parking areas throughout the downtown area. The fees increase for longer stays. As you park in one space for longer, the fee will increase to encourage shorter parking duration in the core areas. Like Springdale, residents can apply for a yearly permit, but this one does carry a cost with it. The permits, also similar to Springdale, are only usable in specific zones, and each permit must be approved by town hall. So they're not quite as easily shiftable as the Springdale ones, where it's just kind of an automated system.
Christopher, can I ask you a question about these 2 comparable contexts, please?
Sure.
Are either one of them on federally owned ground?
That I have not been able to determine yet. I would think that the Springdale one, of these 2, if either one would work to be that way, I would think the Springdale one would be that way, but haven't confirmed it yet. That's still coordinating with them.
And I've spoken with Breckenridge Police, and they don't have the federal limitations that the town of Alta is subject to.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks.
Last couple notes about Breckenridge before we move on. Employees of the downtown businesses, similar to the residents, can apply for permits, but those are assigned to specific lots. So for example, the ski area employees cannot park, the employees that can't park in the ski area itself, either because it's too full or whatever limitations there are, those would have to park in a satellite parking lot and then shuttle in. And similarly, the skiers themselves would need to park in the ski area lot or shuttle as well, or pay the additional fee that would come from parking somewhere else. With the time that we have left, I want to review some of the early data that we received from the surveys that were sent out late last week. While we're certainly expecting more data to come in, we're already starting to notice some trends that would be worth discussing here. And to caveat this data right from the start, it's important to keep in mind that data collection, did get up to kind of a late start after, some hiccups getting the project running. The data collection is in progress. The data we have yet to collect will likely affect the recommendations in the parking plan. So these points here aren't absolutely concrete. Anyway, with that caveat out of the way, the clearest point that we've observed from the data so far, though, is that the demand along town managed parking along SR 210 is likely already going to exceed supply. Rather that it has in the past, and it will likely continue to in the future. The town of Alta manages just over 200 parking stalls along 210, and early results indicate about that many stalls are already anticipated to be used on weekends and holidays, or at least they have been in the past. And that's just among the 45-ish responses that we've had so far. An additional 80 to 90 stalls were also reported to be used within Alta ski area on weekends and holidays. Since that lot is moving to paid parking only, it is very likely that some of that parking will shift to town of Alta parking managed areas. While the numbers are certainly not finalized yet, we can be certain that demand will outpace existing supply. Beyond that, there was a series of questions asking about carpooling and ride sharing, and this question was for all respondents, cabin owners, lodge owners, business owners, things like that. When asked about carpooling and ride sharing, we found that lodges and local businesses commonly leaned towards encouraging carpooling and ride sharing amongst employees and guests. One lodge, for example, expressed that they currently have a rideshare vehicle and are likely going to add a second one when the paid parking program comes online. That would be to, intend to reduce the demand for guest parking in town managed areas. In the survey, we also included a open-ended comment box at the end to receive feedback about a future parking program. As expected, those who live up there were most concerned about any changes to parking regulation, and so many residents voiced concern that they would lose parking access. And as part of the effort to preserve historical uses throughout the area, we understand that we need to provide a way for residents to maintain access to parking. While the parking plan is in early stages of development and will change over the course of the next month, it is increasingly likely that the parking plan will provide some number of seasonal parking permits in overnight parking areas, like the parking plans reviewed in Breckenridge and Springdale. Beyond that, as we look to next month's meeting, we're looking to wrap up that data collection. This map right here shows the addresses that we've already responded to in the survey, and we're looking to follow up with priorities. We're looking to follow up with properties that were invited to respond but have not yet been able to. At that point, we'll be able to analyze the data and begin preparing a draft parking plan to present to the town council. Drafting that plan is likely to include coordination with potential parking management vendors. I'm to understand Alta has already started receiving proposals from vendors. And then also discussing potential dedicated zones for specific land uses. That's a delicate balancing act that we have to work with the Forest Service on, because it is that federally protected land. And then regardless of how that shapes out, we'll be drafting parking pricing options and timing structures, and preparing early versions of outreach tools to help communicate the parking plan to the public. Beyond that, we'll be reviewing travel demand management mitigations that we can recommend to the town at a later date. So that was a whole lot. Any questions?
Hi, Chris. My other role here in town is that I manage Alta Lodge, and we received, this goes to your data collection, we received a survey, and then also our staff has received the survey separately as residents of the Grizzly area. And I'm sure that this request already came back to you, but we'd like to see the whole survey before we start answering it, so that we're not just doing it on our screen in an ad hoc manner, so that we can give it the complete attention and the research that it calls for. So I think there's two separate surveys, one for the residents and one for the lodges. But we'd like to see all of the survey questions before we start responding.
Okay, so the only difference between the two versions of the survey is that the lodges were also asked about their, employment, typical occupation numbers for, when during typical weekdays versus holidays and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm anticipating, but unfortunately I couldn't even get to the second page and beyond without answering the first page. So I think it'd be reasonable to see all of the questions so that we can give it a full attention, and it's going to call for a little bit of homework on our part.
Cliff, excuse me. I'm intended to help you. You asked Mike and I to follow up on that, and I think I just dropped the ball because it was over the weekend. So I apologize for that, and we can work on getting you another kind of representation of the survey questions.
Chris, I think we missed the last little bit of that.
Can you hear me generally though?
Yes.
Cliff asked Mike and I over the weekend that question, and I think I may have responded, but basically I dropped the ball. So yeah, we'll work with Chris. We have a meeting tomorrow morning on this project, and we'll talk about how to provide that to you. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. Could you explain a bit about that last acronym? I didn't quite catch what that stood for. Transportation. Oh. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, transportation demand management. Typically, transportation demand management involves, when we can't just add a lane or, fix a traffic signal or something like that, travel demand management options come into play by managing the mode choices that are easiest to use to get to a location. So if that means improving the transit to and from Alta, as the buses get easier to use and cheaper and whatnot, then people are more likely to use them rather than drive their car. And so that would be an example of a transportation TDM mitigation.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up too. Did you look at any other communities or just primarily the two as comparables, Springdale and Breckenridge?
We looked at a couple other ones. Those are the two that were most similar to our study area. We also looked at Heavenly up in California, and these two had the most similar parking management scheme to what we're, or at least similar circumstances behind them needing to manage their parking.
Thank you.
I also had a question, and it may be that I didn't understand, but I thought that you said that, but that we would have to plan for some number of seasonal parking permits in the overnight area. I don't know if I heard that correctly. I'm not sure what it means, and if I didn't hear it correctly, can you tell me what you did say, even though I didn't hear it that way?
Yeah, so in all of it, so for example, in the two case study areas that we looked at, both of them provided a yearly or seasonal parking permit for residents. Here we're likely going to need to do something similar, where people who very, very frequently park in the town of Alta shouldn't necessarily be expected to pay the exact same daily fee that someone who just pops up for one day on a weekend would pay. Say someone goes to use a ski area and it's $25 a day. It would be kind of a hard ask to ask someone who owns a cabin up there to pay $25 a day for 2 vehicles over the entire winter. A seasonal parking pass would aim to permit that person to park within the town managed area at perhaps a less extreme cost, if we're talking $25 a day for 2 vehicles.
Thank you.
Does the number of permits and the cost of permits, also, I imagine rideshare van availability is one of those mitigation opportunities, but the number of permits and the cost of permits is part of that as well, I assume.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
I would say for anybody listening that the ski area has a handful of rideshare vans, UTA rideshare vans, and I know the Alta Lodge, Cliff, I'm not sure if you ended up getting one last year. We talked about it, but for any of the businesses that are listening, it's very easy to get a UTA rideshare van as long as you have a couple of drivers that have clean driving records and are willing to be drivers. So any business that wants to do that for their employees, UTA makes it very easy and very cost effective. They cover gas, they cover maintenance. There's like a monthly fee for the van, but I just wanted to put that out there. That is, we face a demand problem with our residents and employees of businesses. That rideshare van thing might be very helpful to a lot of our businesses.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, excellent point, Elise. I wanted to follow up that the Rustler's done that as well. The time to begin to communicate with UTA about that is now.
All right, Chris Colley, Christopher Bender, are we good? I think that that's what we asked you to do, Christopher, and we really appreciate all the work you're doing on this. I know you, I know I've had a number of meetings with you, and I know you've had a number of meetings that don't include me, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So far it's been a great project to work on.
Right, and I'll just add a thanks to the WFRC as the sponsors of this.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Christopher.
Yep, thank you.
All right, I see something on the agenda that I guess, Margaret, you wanted to raise something about an ethics policy, but I am not aware of what this is going to be.
So thank you for putting that onto the agenda. I appreciate that because I think that the ethics of the town is important because not only are we public servants, but in order for the public to have confidence in us, I think having an ethics policy is worthwhile. But as I looked at the documents that were presented to us in June for signature and so on, I found that there were at least 4 different documents, and it may be that there actually are more than that. And so I had concerns about some of the definitions that were in them, as well as the policies and standards within them that I found to be potentially contradictory or at least not necessarily consistent. One is we're talking about definitions of employees, officers, or officials. For the employee code of ethics, we have a conflict of interest policy where we talk about officers that are defined as elected officials and appointed officials. The ethical behavior pledge form talks about elected and appointed officials, and we're pledging to adhere to the code, the quote, code of ethics approved by the mayor. And is that distinct from the employee code of ethics? And then a conflict of interest disclosure form that we sign that I thought I signed when I was first elected, but apparently it was something that was supposed to be done annually. So I wanted us as a council to look at what our ethics policies are and to make sure that we are addressing it in a consistent way, or where we're making a distinction that we understand that. So I provided this document to Jen and Piper today. Piper said there wasn't time to get it to the council last week. So therefore it's only presented to all of you today. So again, the topics that I was looking at was consistently labeling, to whom do the provisions apply in those categories that are listed there: elected, appointed, employees, officers. Disclosure, sometimes we're disclosing things to the mayor, sometimes to the council, sometimes the clerk. We don't necessarily disclose to the public as a written policy. And sometimes the disclosure is at the time of the conflict or transaction, which is what Cliff did today during the work session. And sometimes the disclosure is annually. And then there are different results as well following that disclosure, whether or not we're allowed to continue to perform the duty. There's some disclosure that we are supposed to do publicly before acting. And then there's some actions that we are forbidden to do following a disclosure. And there's some that require removal from a position. Then there's also who makes the decision about that result. Is it the individual? Is it the mayor? Is it the town council, or potentially a voter? And then if you can scroll up, Jen, the standard applicable. Do we want the standard to be uniform? Because that was a little too far. As you can see, I've listed there maybe 8 different categories of what the standard is for what we are being held to do. Is it a fiduciary duty? Are we to not engage in a transaction that is in conflict, or to engage in a transaction which a reasonable person might consider to be in conflict? To me, those are different. So on and so forth. So there's a lot of information that is in these documents that we have that are potentially, as I say, inconsistent or contradictory. And if there is a good reason for it, then let's continue it. If there's not a good reason, then I think we ought to look at it and reevaluate. And then if we go on to the next page. Again, the application, some of it has to do with secondary employment. And again, because the documents refer to employees that include appointed and elected officials, it's pretty clear that, Mayor, obviously you have employment. It's not necessarily secondary. It's your primary job at the University of Utah, and many of the council members have employment as well. So there are provisions that are being used to apply to all of us, whether or not they really should be applied to all of us. This would prevent any council member or mayor from having another job. And I'm not sure that's what we want or intend. And even if it applies instead to only town official or to town staff, many, or not, maybe not many, but there are some town staff that have secondary employment that work for another company in town. And so again, is that potentially giving rise to criticism or suspicion of a conflict of interest by that employee having this other employment in the town? As we go down further, it talks about financial interests, direct or indirect, and is it a personal interest? Some situations it talks about a person or a family member. Family member is defined differently, sometimes as spouse or relative or dependent. In other circumstances, it is only a relative. And how broad is that? Other questions that come up is clearly if one has a partner, but not related by blood or marriage, is that an interest that that individual might have that could potentially lead to a conflict of interest? So again, there's a lot of material here, and it was not something that I could do in recommending specific documents or changes to specific documents, but I think it's a policy that the council should consider and decide how we want to proceed with it. So that's the reason for my bringing it up. And again, thank you for putting it on the agenda.
So
I think I'm out of time.
I'm not quite clear on what your request or suggestion for action is. I think Polly is available to talk about some of these things for sure.
And can I make a suggestion that Polly and I can go over these? These were generally boilerplate recommendations from the state auditor. But why don't Polly and I look at them in relation to these issues and send something out, not with the meeting materials, but in a week or so, I could send, maybe Polly, we could send them out to the council with addressing some of these.
Well, I would suggest, as Piper just said, these documents came from the state auditor. They were templates. They are based on the state code, which is not always as artfully written as we would like. And it can make it confusing, and most of the definitions do come from there. So maybe the better thing to do is, Margaret, we're very lucky to have someone who's so well qualified looking at this. Maybe it's where you and I speak to someone from the state auditor's office and go over it and understand what their requirements are. A lot of this is because we need to make sure that we're meeting those state auditor requirements. So that's why we jump through a lot of those hoops and have people sign those documents. And then we can take it from there and see if we want to make any amendments to what we're using.
One of the, that might be a good solution, but the other comment that I would make is that on one of the documents, we talked about our intent was to have a higher standard than what the state required. And so we certainly can look at what the state's requiring, but if we are going to elevate our requirements beyond what the state requires, then of course that would be a different measure than what we've done. So, and apologies, Piper and I sent an email today that the documents that she sent me, I was not able to effectively open. And so there is a separate employee document that's different than the one that was sent to the council to sign, even though it refers to council members as employees. And Polly, Piper, you and I had this email before the last month that it doesn't really apply to us, even though council members do get a W-2. So I understand the problem with dealing with a state provision that has to apply to all municipalities. But that's where we are. That's why I picked it up.
I think I'll just throw in the idea here that we have a certain amount of budgeted expenditures on legal fees, so we may have to do this kind of review over some time. Mike, I can see that you'd like to jump in.
Yeah, just a fast staff comment, because we deal with this all the time in police policy. It's oftentimes a requirement from some higher authority that you have a policy or a statement of policy in place, and you've got to be really careful about how you craft your local policy. It has to not only be compliant, it has to be attainable. So if there's a policy that says, a police officer can't work more than 8 hours a shift, well, is that attainable in Alta? So I would caution you as you go forward to keep that in mind.
Okay, thanks. Okay, it sounds like we have a plan to at least discuss this further. The next item on the agenda is the discussion and possible action on a resolution 2021 R13 pertaining to water rates. I'm guessing,
I can help here, Mayor.
and this is something you would like to address.
Yeah, so we discovered, thanks to a member of the public, that we had a typographical error in the resolution that we passed last month, where it stated that for commercial users that water would be 73.42 per 1,000 gallons, which is the ECU value, and it just got put in more places than it should have been. So this is an effort to correct that. The new allocation is 1147. That was what we had reported on in the memo that had been produced, and that is now the cost per 1,000 gallons for both residential and for commercial based on ECU values. So that's a quick summary of what and why. And this resolution seeks to, we were anticipating maybe adjusting some other numbers moving forward. So maybe Polly, you can provide advice if we want to pass this resolution now, or a version of it. Maybe we can amend it to, I don't know if this is coming too early or not, I guess, based on the previous conversation we had about the business licenses and whatnot. Oh, you're muted still, Polly. And I apologize, I'm light challenged at the moment. I'm sitting in the dark, it looks like.
So I would recommend we move forward with the water rate resolution to update it and to repeal and replace the prior versions, which just, there's so many prior resolutions. It makes it completely unwieldy to try to read what's being changed. So, which is why we do repeal and replace. And I would suggest that you move forward with that portion of this so that it's clean and we can apply the right water rate without any conflict with our resolution.
So this is just a corrective effort of something that we've already discussed, right? If I'm understanding everybody correctly.
Yes. And I believe it was the intent of the council based on the conversations in the passing. There was just, we didn't.
I don't imagine that the council expected to charge 6.5 times what we are actually intending to charge.
Yes.
Jen, is that the right file you want to share?
I believe so. Do I have the wrong one? Or do you want me to share?
Yes, Jen, you want to do the one that is just the water rate one?
Right,
Yeah,
just this one. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you, Piper. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Sorry, 13, not 14. So
Yes,
as you can
13.
see, I'll scroll down. So this is just explaining the typographical error here. This is talking about the repeal and replace.
Yeah, this is the same document that's on the website for today's meeting.
Yes, and then this is the number here.
That was
That
just
this is
good.
the, yeah. In addition to the repeal and the replace, just to make things simpler for staff and the public, changing this number are the two.
Okay, so we're doing this because this got initiated because of this typographic error. And then in the meanwhile, we came to the conclusion that a repeal and replace is better than an amendment.
That is
right?
correct, yes.
Okay, I'll move that I'll look for a motion to adopt resolution 2021 R13.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Opposed for the same reasons that I objected to the last one, because I feel of the lack of equity in terms of rates with the ECU for commercial versus residential not having an ECU value other than what's assigned.
okay. Piper, what was that? Was that 4-1 or 3-2? I'm sorry, I didn't catch everybody's vote.
I think that was 4-1.
Okay, that's
Sheridan?
That's correct.
Sheridan,
Yes.
were you at 4?
Yes,
Okay,
I was.
Thank you. All right, so that resolution is adopted. Let's move to the next item on the agenda is discussion and possible action on the 2021 05 pertaining to adopting the business license study and amending Title 3, Chapter 1 related to business license disproportionate costs and enhanced fees. Okay, is there a motion to adopt that ordinance that anybody wants to make? It's on the website, it says 06.
Yes, I realized that error after everything had gone out. So yes, there is a typo on the agenda for that. It should say
So the
06.
real number is 5 or 6?
No, it is 6.
Okay.
5 was one of the fire ordinances.
Okay, so there's a typo on the draft ordinance, I guess. Or no, just on the agenda. I see. I'm with you now.
It may have been fixed. It should have been fixed when it was sent out to you last
Okay,
night.
no, I got it, right. Okay. This was I just printed out this agenda this morning, so. Okay, so there's nobody who wants to make this motion?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second? I'll second it. Okay, so now we have an opportunity to discuss the ordinance.
Sure, a couple things. First of all, I'd like to reiterate that I do have a conflict of interest because I manage Alta Lodge, which is not only pays business licensing fees, but would see a big increase under this proposed ordinance. I'd also like to convey for the benefit of Alta Ski Area that Alta Ski Area would like to have some time, further opportunity to evaluate what in-kind contributions Alta Ski Area makes toward town operations that should go toward offsetting some of those increases. Taking a little bit broader view, to me, this is why we disclose our conflicts of interest, and this is real. I sit here only on behalf of the town of Alta, but I certainly can't separate from my perspective as a business manager that it's super annoying to see a proposal that would almost quadruple the lodge's business licensing fees. And quite honestly, looking at it candidly, I don't see the justification for it. I also appreciate on behalf of the town that, yeah, we have to cover our budget. Money doesn't grow on trees. We do need to cover our budgets. I have one specific, pretty fundamental philosophical objection to the quantification of service calls as being a disproportionate service. I just totally disagree with that as being an appropriate item of disproportionate services. It's public safety, and public safety is not a menu item that should get assigned to particular parts of the community. It benefits us all, and also from an economic and accounting standpoint, it's not when a police officer responds to a call that happens to be in a particular location, that's not an increased marginal cost. And so I don't agree that it would be appropriate to assign that to the location or type of location where it happened to occur. And, as a final comment, first of all, I am really appreciative and respectful of all of the staff time that went into this. I think it was diligent, careful, thoughtful, good hard work. It's not a matter of criticizing the work of a particular professional who was engaged by the town. However, I do strongly disagree with it. Let's not make any mistake about that. And when you look at the existing fees, pretty fair allocation across the board of what it should cost to license a business in town. And when you look at the current proposal, even with the 35% mitigation, which I appreciate, it's speaking in my role as a council member of the town of Alta. I believe that it is completely disproportionate. And certainly to not take action today and to stay with the status quo, I think would result in a much more fair and equitable outcome for the businesses of the town.
Am I hearing a motion to postpone?
No, although, I do, I'm certainly not going to support the motion initially just on behalf of giving Alta Ski Area enough time to gather and present the information about the in-kind services that they provide.
So we either need to vote down the motion or we need to postpone it, which I'm not clear which direction you're interested in taking, given what you said about the Alta Ski.
I'll move to postpone it. I mean, I think both Sheridan and Margaret, it seemed like in the work session that they were asking for more time. So that's kind of this, and it sounds like, I mean, Cliff is asking for more time a little bit, so maybe we should postpone. So I move that we do that.
Do you want to move postponement to the next town council meeting or indefinitely, I think is an option.
Well, I get this may be for Polly or Jen, but now that we've had the study done, I don't know. I know that we have to charge a fee a maximum fee for some of those business license fees do have to come down, I believe, now that the study's been done. So I don't think we can keep it status quo. But like I said in the work session, I am a little worried that category 1 and 8 are kind of bearing the brunt because those other businesses went down of trying to meet our budget.
Can I just join in that thought for a moment, Elise? The fact that some consultant somewhere expressed an opinion does not suddenly bind us to some kind of statutory obligation. Yes, we have to comply with the statute. What if the consultant was wrong?
Well, that's part of why part of the ordinance is adopting that study. So I guess you could ask for another study to be done. I do know that just based on my experience as a municipal attorney, Zions is very well regarded. And in looking at other studies similar, the methodology used is very similar. But if you have questions about the study, we've had the Zion's representative here, I believe twice, to discuss it. But if you have questions about the methodology, by all means, you can challenge that and or ask for another study. I do think that where we do have evidence, we are required by state law not to charge more than what our underlying costs are. And so by having this evidence that the underlying cost is about, $62, we would face some challenges if we continue to charge higher rates when October 1st comes around.
One might disagree with the method of the study, but one can't just simply substitute another number at one's, because it was a number from some years ago. I don't think you have to have a number that you can defend.
I'll make a motion to postpone till next town council meeting for a discussion. Maybe that'll give, the ski area time, Margaret and Sheridan time. And we can either choose to adopt something then or, keep it status quo and make that call. But maybe we just, for now, move to postpone. Let's see, because I don't think we're going to have I don't think we have the votes to pass it.
Is there a second to postpone this until the next town council meeting?
Second.
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, this is postponed. Thank you.
Can I offer up that, our representative, I haven't personally contacted our representative from Zions who was here earlier and during the meeting, but up to 2 council members can talk to him at the same time without violating open public meeting rules. I'm happy to, be a sounding board if you have any of the legal questions. They're pretty sophisticated as to what the law is in Utah for this. So I don't necessarily think I need to be involved, but I would just recommend, and maybe they'll have to charge us for some of their time. That's fair. But if there are questions about this, I would recommend that the council reach out to him to get more information so that you can make a decision.
Well, and I guess I was going to offer up, and sorry that you guys can't see me, the lighting where I am is horrible. That, there were a lot of questions asked that I didn't get to answer that I'd like to have the opportunity to answer. And so is there a way, do we want to have small meetings? Do we want to have a longer work session? Like, my goal is to help you guys understand the study and the results and feel good about any decision that's made in the future. So what can I do to help get you guys ready for that or help facilitate you providing questions to me? And then I can report back on those. I sent this out a while ago, and I know it's a big, long study, and there was a couple materials that came in last minute. But it's pretty easy for me to respond to you when I know what your questions are. I didn't get much up front.
Yeah,
I didn't have any questions on the study. That's why I didn't give you any, but this is, I guess, the first time the last couple of days was the first time I've been able to see what staff recommended for the fees. And so that's kind of, for me, maybe just a little more digesting time on that. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah,
Like I
and
said, I don't have questions on the study.
yeah,
Yeah, I've already expressed a couple of substantive things as far as, dialogue with the consultant at Zion's. I guess my question would be $62? Are you totally sure about that? Because that sounds kind of low.
I appreciate all the robust concerns that are being brought up, particularly by you, Cliff. Thank you. Some things that are circulating in my mind about this that I really don't have answers for, but that I think should be part of the discussion, are how little of our taxable revenue we actually keep as a town. Alta's been described before during our council meetings as being in a very affluent place. Who should pay for these things? If it's not, we've been comfortable voting to increase taxation for our residential property owners by 15%. And again, I don't have answers to these questions, but I think this is all.
We didn't increase that. We lowered their property tax rate that comes to the town, Sheridan.
Not their actual taxable rate when it comes to what they need to pay to cover the fire expenses going forward with
We saved them
UFSA.
$200,000. I'm sorry, I just can't abide that. It would have been 750 where they're paying 550. That's a savings of $200,000. And we lowered our tax rate
by 15%, does it not, sir?
We don't have any control over that.
Okay. We can argue
What the
semantics.
county does, what the UFA does, UFSA charges, federal taxes might go up too. We don't control that. Okay, look, it's 5 minutes till 6. We still have another item on the agenda, and discussing this further isn't really on our agenda. And now that we've postponed it, so I think we should just go with the postponement. There are 2 items on this agenda, 11 and 12, that pertain to this. Do we need to postpone 12 now in a separate action? I would think we do.
Yeah,
Okay, is there a
I
motion?
move to postpone.
Okay, is there a second? Postpone until the next town council meeting?
Second.
Well, I'm asking the person who, I wasn't sure who made that motion.
I think I did, but I think it has to be postponed unless and until we resolve the other item related to the business license study itself. It may be that at the next council meeting, we don't actually have an adoption for it.
Well,
So,
then we can postpone it again.
okay, so the next meeting.
Okay, Elise, you want to second that? Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Chris, you got a few minutes only on the capital projects plan. Do you still want them or do you want to wait? Especially
Well, it's
since the
interesting that
budget may
you
be
pose
up
it
in-
that way.
I think the budget may be up in the air too.
Okay. Well, I'll just offer that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll offer that. We mistakenly, I think it's my fault for putting it in the wrong folder on our network. We included the capital projects plan in the consent agenda. So you've already approved the capital projects plan. No, we did not intend for that to be approved as part of the consent agenda, but that is how it got packaged and delivered to you all. We do have to, when we have money in a capital account with the public treasurer's investment fund, we have to have a plan in place to essentially allocate those funds to specific projects. We've been doing this annually for a few years, and there was a document in the consent agenda that we really intended for you to consider separately that has a list of projects. Many of them are holdovers from previous years. There's a large additional line item for just sort of a general community center savings fund. And so, yeah,
I'm
Mayor,
gonna
if you would,
interrupt and take some of the blame for the agenda because it doesn't say discussion and possible action. So you can't approve it today. But please review the capital project plan and it'll be on next month's agenda to approve. And please ask questions about it in the meantime. I believe Margaret has submitted some already. And so that you understand what's on there and how we can use that. Sorry, Chris.
No, I
That's
think
okay.
that's a
That's
good
great.
point. All right, new business is the next item on the agenda.
I have a quick question about why our town park can't be as robust as it has been in the past with regard to swings and a slide based on some questions that have come from citizens in town.
John, I think you probably know the answer to that. I think there was a liability issue, wasn't there?
Yeah, which is funny because the insurance company made us take the slide away. And I thought it was the coolest thing in the world because you couldn't fall off that slide because it was built into the hill. However, they said that those things were a liability with the sun and the heat and people were getting burned. I guess we could look into getting something that I don't even know if they have slides anymore that don't overheat with exposure to the sun. But the
Yeah, they're made out of plastic, I think.
yeah, but that gets pretty hot too.
Wasn't it also a location issue with a location issue of where the slide was in relationship to other?
I know the slide had to come first and it was because of the heat, I think. And then the swings got, then the park was inspected again and it was decided that the specs for park playgrounds, that the swings are ground cover that we put was acceptable, but it wasn't big enough. And so it's something like 20 feet over where somebody could reasonably swing off of the land off of those things wasn't big enough. And then to the side, it would have encroached and we would have had to take vegetation away in order to meet those requirements. So that was the reason why they got taken away. Whether or not they can't be redesigned is a question that's could be discussed.
Right. We could look into that if you were directed to. It's a kind of an interesting maze, though, trying to have any fun in parks anymore with all the lawyers and the insurance company. Sorry, Margaret and Polly and Cliff. Who am I leaving out?
And presumably there are some budget implications to doing that besides maybe dealing with the Forest Service and or the ski area.
Right.
All right, it's 6:01. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Well, I guess just to follow up with regard to the new business, I'm wondering if we could, without spending a great deal of time, look into what would be necessary to bring back at least some version of a park that citizens have said they really miss and enjoy.
We can do that. Can we get a couple more nods?
I concur.
I'll only say that, I mean, many years ago, it took us not a couple of years. It took an awful long time to get the right colored sand approved from the forest so that we could have the volleyball court. So I almost hate to have anybody look at our area again, but we'll do it. And if we have to change the color of the sand, we'll do that too.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay.
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay,
Aye.
good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.